Hey there guys, it's Darwin with another review, and what we have here is actually something pretty interesting. This is not a craft beer review, because these are not craft beers, what we have right here. This is Blue Moon. It is from Miller Coors, so it is not a craft beer. If you guys don't already know, it's not a smaller brewery. And this is Shock Top, and this is also not a craft beer. This is from InBev Anheuser-Busch. So, the familiar breweries that make your good old, Coors and Miller and Budweiser beers are also making some Witbiers. And I'm sure you guys have seen this around. I have actually not had either of these brews in I don't know how many years. So it's going to be pretty interesting to try these out. It's sometimes fun to have some beers that are not crafty and we'll see if they're delicious, but some non-crafty beers and sort of it'll remind you how good craft beer is. This is actually great after yesterday. Finally meeting Mark C. Thank you for commenting all the time. I met him at a beer event where I was drinking, Firestone Walker Parabola, Cantillon Iris. Absolutely killer brews. We're going to drink we'll see how these beers are. We'll drink some less spectacular brews tonight. So, the beer, this is Blue Moon. Comes in a nice kind of a really rich, hazy golden color. Really lovely looking beer. Let's give an aroma on this. Oh man, what the hell is that? Oh, man. The first sniff, I got this really weird kind of like pungent, almost not really spoiled, but funky, which I don't expect from this beer. Yeah, you know what it is? It smells towards a adjunct lager, that kind of like, I don't know, that kind of funky, grainy kind of aroma. And I was expecting, with a gorgeous beer like this, something a little bit more fruity, a little bit more, wheat-based. Yeah, I do get that orange peel, but yeah, it has that weird kind of funky kind of, again, American adjunct lager kind of like Budweiser kind of aroma. Cheers. Not bad up front. You do get that nice punch of orange, which, you'd expect. Not much flavor on the mid palate. Then dries off very aggressively and falls off immediately onto, again, what I was saying. It just tastes very bland, sort of like an American, again, a Budweiser Coors kind of beer. Yeah. There's just that lame kind of grainy flavor throughout. You get a little pop of that kind of Witbier kind of flavor, but it has, again, just a flat flavor. A lot of these grain kind of flavors. Yeah, just like almost like eating raw grain or kind of rawish kind of cereal. This aroma is actually better. Wow, a little bit more subtle. Not so much of that kind of funky kind of aroma that I was getting in this one. You do get the orange. It almost smells like Starburst, a little bit of candy, like some kind of candy that like from a dish. Those hard candies. Cheers. Yeah. Wow. This one I think is even more flat on the flavor. You don't get that burst of orange, or burst, but hint of orange. This beer is just plain. Yeah. Maybe a touch of that candy sweetness up front, a hint of it, but then it falls aggressively onto a bunch of nothing. Again, a lot of grain. Aftertaste is, again, a little bit more of that kind of familiar kind of Bud Miller Coors kind of just boring, grainy kind of flavor. Oh, sorry. Yeah, nice kind of burst of a little bit of sweetness. I'm trying to figure out between the two which one I like more. This one definitely tastes a little bit more like a Witbier. It's pretty evident. You do get a little bit more of the spice, the coriander's coming through, a little bit more of that orange. Despite the beers having very similar characteristics, this definitely tastes more like the traditional kind of style. Yeah. It has more beer flavor too, if that makes any sense. Yeah. This one's a lot more watery. This one tastes actually like you're drinking beer. This one's just like, tastes like almost watered down beer, which is not what you want in beer, obviously. So yeah, this gets a 78 on Beer Advocate. This gets a 79 on Beer Advocate. I'm actually quite impressed that the beers have such big differences in rating, and I sort of see why, because this actually tastes, the Blue Moon actually tastes towards more of a traditional kind of Witbier. I'm not going to rate them myself. I'm not quite even sure what I give them, because they're on that lower end, and for me it's hard to figure these things out what you give a beer, if it's like a 50, a 55, a 65, a 75. It's sort of confusing for me. Not too many beers do I ever rate that low. These are not great beers. If you ever do want to drink a Witbier, please have an Allagash White or a Hoegaarden. Those are fantastic beers, much better than these two. But if you do have to drink one of these, definitely drink the Blue Moon. Definitely tastes more like a traditional Witbier. And actually interesting about this, I'll post a link down under. But speaking about these two beers, it's actually really interesting in the fact that these are big breweries, Bud Miller Coors, are sort of making these beers, and you'd think that they're doing it to sort of enter the craft market and sort of, take away from the craft market share. But really what's happening is that they're, basically eating their own tail, if that makes any sense. What's happening is that people are buying these beers, not understanding that they're non-craft beers. They're by the big macro brews, and they advertise them as sort of crafty kind of beers. But what's happening is that people are drinking these beers, sort of enjoying them because they're decently more flavorful than a Budweiser or a Miller High Life, and they're moving on to maybe again Allagash White or a Hoegaarden. Then they're maybe expanding onto a porter, an IPA, a pale ale, and these are sort of gateway drugs or gateway beers into craft beer. So what's happening is that the big macro breweries are making beers that are moving people away from them and into craft beer, which is really an interesting idea. And it sort of shows you that craft beer is growing despite, the big macro breweries putting out these beers. So I thought that was a really cool article. Highly recommend you guys read that article. It's really cool. So until next time, guys, cheers. Avoid bad beers. Drink some craft. Later, guys. Later.